we know that when two figures are congruent, they're the same shape and the same size, but more so, we know that all their corresponding parts match up. All their pairs of angles and all their pair of sides that are corresponding will be congruent in the two figures. So let's go ahead and use that idea and kind of dwell deeper into that by looking at two triangles that are congruent. Now, I'm going to tell you that these two triangles are congruent, and in another video we'll talk about how we can go about proving that, but for right now, just go with me and assume that, yeah, I'm telling the truth, that these two triangles are congruent. The first thing I want to do is I want to write a congruency statement that says the two triangles are congruent to each other. So what I'm going to do is start with a triangle symbol to indicate that I'm working with a triangle, and that triangle does not have to look like the actual triangle. It's just a label, so just draw a little equilateral triangle. And the first three letters that we write down for the first triangle can be in any order you want them to be in. We talked about in class, though, being nice to me when I grade and always doing the first one alphabetical. But I have a choice. I mean, I don't have to do it as ABC. I could do any order I want to, but we're going to agree that we're going to put that first one alphabetical when we have a choice. The symbol for congruent is an equal sign with a little squiggle above it. So I want to say that's congruent to triangle. And now at this point, I have to be careful, because as soon as I pick the order of the first triangle, which doesn't matter, although we're going to agree to go alphabetical, the order of the second one does matter. It's determined. It has to match up with what I just wrote. For example, angle A had that single tick mark in it. So I know that I have to find that same single tick mark in the other triangle and start with that. It may or may not be alphabetical. It doesn't matter. It's got to match up with what we started. So F comes first. Next up, in our original triangle, we chose B, which was the double tick mark. That matches up to angle E in the second triangle. And then finally, that's going to end with D. Now, that's the congruency statement I want to write, but there's many more we could have written. Like I said, we don't have to start alphabetically, although I would like you to. Let me just show you another way that we could do this correctly. Suppose instead we did BAC, which isn't wrong, it's just not what I want to do. And I want to see what that would match up to. Again, you have to make sure that the second triangle is in the correct order the first triangle was written in. So we started with angle B, which was the double tick mark. That's got to match up to angle E in the second triangle, okay? Again, continue to match up letters. I can see that this would be F, D, E, F, D. So there's another way that we could write a congruency statement. Now, even though there's many ways we could write correct statements, it doesn't mean everything's correct. Let's take a look at a non-example, something that would not work out. So suppose we went again with BAC. I started that way for whatever reason, which isn't wrong, but it's not what I want to do alphabetical. And I want to write something that's actually wrong. Suppose I tried to match that up to F, D, E. Well, if I take a look at that, again, let's kind of look at the first letter. I started with B, which was the double tick mark. The first letter in the second triangle, I matched that up with F, which is the single tick mark. This is absolutely a non-example. It's a good bad example. It's not correct. So there's a non-example. So be careful, even though there's more than one correct way to do it, not everything's going to be correct, okay? And then for the final part of this is the part that's really easy but really annoying. I want to match up the parts of this. Well, triangles have three angles, so there's going to be three angle pairs to match up. And triangles, of course, also have three sides. So there's going to be 6 congruency statements I write to match up all 6 parts. It's easy, but it's annoying. So let's just go ahead and work on labeling and make sure we got this. So let's just start with angle A. It takes one letter, in this case, to label an angle with that little angle symbol. Angle A is going to be congruent to angle F. They both have the single tick mark. If I keep going down the list, then angle B would have to be congruent to angle E, of course. Those are the double tick marks. And then finally, the third pair of angles would be angle C, congruent to angle D. So hopefully that's easy. I understand it's annoying. It takes some time, but it should be an easy thing to do. Let's go ahead and match up the sides as well. So I'm going to just start with a single side tick mark. It takes 2 letters to label a segment, so I'm going to say segment AB is congruent to segment FE in the second triangle. Those 2 sides match up. My next pair of sides, I'll go on the bottom of the triangle, so I'm going to say side AC or segment AC is congruent to. Now I'm going to do DF, and notice that, well, some of you are like, well, A and D don't match up. That's okay for segments. I mean, the order doesn't matter. Segment FD is the same as segment DF, so the order here doesn't matter. In the triangle congruency statement it did. And then finally, my remaining pair of sides would be segment AC, congruent to segment FD. So there are all 6 parts identified and matched up with what they're congruent to. Here's a second example I'd like you to try on your own. So in a minute, go ahead and pause the video when I say so, and try to work this out. My work will pop up a few seconds after that. In this case, be careful. The two triangles have been not just translated like the last example, but this time rotated. So some people are good at just in their minds rotating the triangle in their head to get them to match up. But one idea might be to actually redraw the triangle, the second triangle, so it's rotated and matches up to the original a little bit better. So if you need to do that, go ahead, like I kind of started redrawing it for you, go ahead and redraw it so it's easier to match things up. Otherwise, at this point, I'd like you to pause the video, try to write a congruency statement, a non-example of it as well, and then match up all 6 parts. So there's a correct congruency statement. Here's a bad one. Notice K and R don't match. K has a single tick mark, R has a double. And then here are my 3 angles that match up, and there are my 3 pairs of sides that match up. Hopefully your answers match up to mine. They may not match like letter for letter. There's different ways you could write these, especially with the congruency statements and the non-examples, but there's just one example. Remember, we had agreed that we were going to write our congruency statements alphabetically for the first 3 letters. It's not the only way to do a correct one, but it's what I would prefer.